Hello, this is Wes Bridle, and this is another Kingdom Calling Economic Update video. This is the second video that we're going to do for this week. I'm making this on Monday the 6th, 7th, I think. And all of these videos are snapshots in time about what's happened over the last week or two, in this case the last week, that are pointing towards disruptions in our economy. If you haven't seen the Coming Storm video that we did in November, that's an hour-and-a-half video really talking about everything that's happening, big picture, and these comments really only make sense in that context. So if you haven't seen that, I highly recommend you go watch that for free. The link is right next to this video, and I'm going to jump into this. I just filmed another one which you may have already seen. Because I'm only doing it's only been a week since I filmed the last few videos. I've only got two sets of items to put together, so it's a little bit of a hodgepodge. I'm going to call this one inflation, and let's jump into it. Porter Stansberry mentions from time to time that in 1999 Greenspan wrote basically the secret or the way to figure out if a government is solvent or not, if a government is in danger of experiencing hyperinflation or a default because they can't pay their bills. And he said it's actually an easy, all you have to do to figure out if that's the case is, do they have enough hard currency or hard assets to pay for 1 year's worth of debt service? And so the interesting thing to look at and see is where's the United States in that. And we have $800 billion of hard currency, so that's oil, gold, and euros. And we have $2 trillion of debt coming due or needing to be financed over the next year. So you can see we're way below even in that number. And so we're in a very dangerous situation. The FTC, Federal Trade Commission, I think it is, they're Federal Trade Commission, is that right? They're discussing reinventing journalism. They're upset because the newspapers are going out of business. The reality is most people just don't want to watch newspapers anymore. Instead of letting the business market take over and letting the successful achieve and the unsuccessful fail, they want to take over this business. They want to reinvent journalism. So they're talking about allowing newspapers to collude with each other and set prices as a monopoly, which is totally against what our country stands for. They're talking about subsidizing them. Again, more socialism. Socialism hasn't worked anywhere ever, but we keep trying it. They're talking about new taxes to pay for all this on you. So taxing the way that you actually enjoy picking up your news and making in order to pay for ways that you don't want to watch the news. They don't like the fact that their buddies in the media are maybe going to have to get a real job, and so they're wanting to pay for this. It would be like if they wanted to start subsidizing the horse buggy because they don't like the fact that cars are taking over. It doesn't make any sense in real life, but this is what the government is looking into. New York State is delaying paying their bills for the third time in the last 6 months. So this is serious. They're talk about New York going broke. This is, again, it's very serious. South Africa, gold output falls 15%. They used to be #1 in the world in gold production, but their mines are running out of gold. They're now 4th behind China, the U.S., and Australia. China is expanding the use of yuan for international trade. I couldn't tell from the article I read if they're currently pricing gold in their market in yuan or if they're about to or thinking about it. But the article is also talking about they're thinking about pricing other things in yuan, their currency, and the fact that this helps the yuan be accepted in worldwide trade if more things are priced in that currency. And they're allowing more of their provinces going forward to do international trade, converting yuan into other currencies. And they also talk about developing more gold products for the Chinese investor. Chinese people have a very limited amount of things that they're allowed to invest in, and so they're talking about more gold products for the Chinese people to invest in. That's very bullish for gold. Italy's credit default swap cost is rising. Which means people are looking at Italy and saying they might go broke. They need to borrow and refinance over 400 billion euros in the second half of 2010. So it's looking difficult. In the last video, we talked about the fact that Unicredit is probably going to have trouble. It's the biggest bank in Italy. Italy itself is going to have trouble raising these funds, and so the trouble in Europe is not over. Greece has supposedly been urged secretly to give up the euro, to just get out of it. The problem with that would be that they would have to then still owe money in euros because that's the way it was originally borrowed. Except part of the advice is to just say no, we're repaying in drachma. If they go back to their old currency, the drachma, then that would lower the value of what they owe. Of course, the problem for the rest of us is all these other European banks in these supposedly stronger countries that had lent money to Greece would then suffer huge losses, and so then they would go under. So all these countries would go under. There's a ripple effect to us. We're all connected, and we're all going under. It's most of the world hasn't caught on to that yet, but the ones that are the weakest and the ones most obvious to go under, which seem like no big deal because that's not us. The reality is we're connected. As they go under, then our banks go under, our government goes under. It ripples from there. Interesting with the big bailout package that came through here recently, Germans believe the French are bailing out French banks. So Greece is now able to directly borrow money from this bailout package, but then there's a lot of other old Greek bonds being bailed out, and so the German banks promised not to sell their Greek bonds, and so the Germans are now looking at France and saying, it looks like you're bailing out your banks, and now our banks are going to suffer. So there's trouble there in the continent.